YouTube. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Rochelle Smith, and I am a holistic health coach with a focus on spirituality, self-love, self-healing, all that good stuff. This episode of my podcast, the Soul Healing Podcast, I had on Stephanie Dawn Elizabeth, who is a transformational intuitive coach. And so she takes women and helps them kind of step back into their power and find their soul's purpose. And about a year ago, I started my whole spiritual healing journey. I had been healing for a couple years before that, but last year, this time, is when I invested in myself and really took this whole healing process very seriously. And so I'm so excited to have her on the podcast. And since this YouTube channel is very new, I am going to be showing the episodes as I record them for you guys. So let me know in the comments what you think about the episode. Subscribe, share. You can always head over to Instagram. Find me on Instagram at Rochelle C. Smith. And let me know what you guys think. I'm so excited to share this with you.
Since I started this podcast.
Yay, I'm so excited.
Okay, so just like a backstory, I guess, for everybody. It was like a year ago, I think, on Instagram, and I decided to do the coaching, the six week coaching.
That's wild.
It changed my life. Like I can't even explain it. It was just, I had done all this reading, and all the books were like, the answer's in you. And I was like, it's just looking for somebody to tell you the answer. And I don't know if it was just some way that you had worded it or put it in a different way that really made me see, like, I think it was the intuition talk. I had done, like I said, I'd done all the reading, but it was like the actual intuition and then really getting into like what that feels like, what that sounds like.
Yeah.
Before completely like changed everything. And then, just seeing what you were doing gave me a vision of like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is how I can see myself helping people too. But for me, it came, it ties in with the food. So that's where I ended up finding the coaching program that I'm in. But so just, there's not even like enough thanks to give for how much you've changed my life. So.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I can't believe that was a year ago.
I know. It feels like it was like 5 years ago.
It's so wild.
Yeah. So I know. And then for the podcast, I remember I was going back and forth about the podcast. I had like written it, scripted it. That's what you said in one of our calls. You were just like, not everybody's sitting there wanting to do a podcast. You should do it. And like, you know what? I'm going to do it.
I love it.
That's why
I love it. Well, it's been an honor to be a part of your journey as well.
Yeah, it's been awesome. So, all right. Well, if you want to tell everybody a little bit about your story, your backstory, and how you got where you're at.
Oh, sure. Where to begin? I always never know what to say when people ask that question. It's so funny because I always ask that question at the beginning of podcast interviews. But I'm Stephanie Dawn Elizabeth, and my story, it's long, as all of ours are. And kind of how I've gotten to where I am now in what I teach and what I do has been such a wild journey. And I always like to say that, and kind of, even though, no, we don't have time or whatever to go through the whole journey of every single thing that's happened and every single pivot that I've had, or the ups or the downs, I always like to say that it's been a long journey and really emphasize that, because it's even something that you and I have talked about. It's so easy to look at other people's story, especially when we're talking about like your soul purpose or a business you want to start or a desire that you have. It's so easy to look at other people who are doing it and forget that there's this huge backstory to what they did, and also that we don't actually know. And so my journey really with my business or my soul purpose started probably now about 8-ish years ago. In my early 20s, I was in an abusive relationship. And when I got out of that, I was obviously in a space where I had an awareness before that of, okay, I'm here for a reason, or I know I want to help people, or it's going to be something like self-help. At that time, like self-help was really big. It's kind of shifted now for me in a spiritual way, but I knew that deeply. But when I got out of it, all of that had kind of been swept away. Even back in high school, like I had that knowing, but it all got swept away by other stuff. And I think that's true for so many of us, especially women, because we're so intuitive. We've always known like the thing that we're here to do, or what our magic is, as I talk about it. But there's so many parts of our story and our journey that push it back or sweep it away or take like importance over it. And so when I got out of that relationship, it was kind of like a forced, and other parts of my life, it was a kind of a forced, okay, now you have to do the work. And I call that the fall. Like it was that big moment of, I have no other choice but to connect with myself and connect with something else. And from there, it's been literally an 8-year journey of kind of figuring it out and connecting back with myself and what I'm actually here to do, which is guide women back to their soul path and their soul purpose.
Yeah, I love that. Like you said, I think, because I also relate to that. I was in an abusive relationship too. And I think you definitely lose yourself so much in it. Like same thing. I always felt like I was here for something, but it just didn't seem important, or you just kind of put it back. And so, I mean, my journey hasn't been as long as yours yet. I'm still in like year 2. I mean, 1 year of like spiritually, but it did get to a point where it's like, it's like 2 options now. It's like, you just have to do the work. And yeah, there are times where it's hard.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like there's no timeline for how long it should take. I mean, it's a lifelong journey, but for me, it just took that. I mean, it didn't take 8 years for this like awakening, but I was also like in my early 20s. I had no awareness of like what I'm aware of now. But I think our journeys are forever, but they don't have to be, because when you hear that, right, it's like, oh my God, 8 years. Like I'm not gonna I'm not gonna change in this whole 8 years. No, it's just that was 8 years ago. But especially when, okay, so for you, like a year ago, you took this action of, I'm actually going to invest in myself, whether that means money, whether that means time, whether that means energy, whether that means and literally anything, any kind of like investment in yourself, that speeds up the process because it's way more intentional. And I've been talking about that so much lately because that really is the energy of right now. I'm not sure when this is going out, but right now we're kind of like in the midst of pandemic and so much is happening that now is really a time. And I know it can be triggering when people say like invest in yourself, but it actually doesn't necessarily mean, I think it's triggering because people think, okay, this person's just trying to sell me something. When I say it, I don't actually even just mean with money, but invest in the fact that you are here for a reason, and then take action and use your energy from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was for me, that launched me into, because I had been so hesitant to invest in any way, financially or just in myself or whatever. And it was like, once I did that, then it was just kind of like everything started to flow from there. So
100%.
So going back to like, I talk about, so my thing too is like self-love, because I feel like, coming from a place of no self-worth and no self-love or anything. I mean, I think we use our experiences to help others, right? It's like through. So like for intuition, and how would you describe for somebody who's has no idea like how to listen to their intuition, has never like tapped into it or anything, like what would you suggest your advice be to start listening to that and getting in touch with it?
Yeah, it's such a hard thing to explain, but I always, in that beginning phase where it's like, I don't know what I need, I don't even know what that is. But especially for women, we do. It's just that it's being clouded over by so much of our experience. And because our energy is very much outward, like we're taking care of everybody, we're making everything good, especially if we've been in like an abusive relationship or something traumatic, or like we're always just in that space of everything is outward. And so a very easy, it's not, I don't even want to say easy because it is not easy, but the easiest way to describe it, or the easiest way to tap into it, is to literally start asking yourself the same questions that you ask other people and listen to the answer. And that's your intuition. I think when we talk about intuition, we think about like being psychic, or like this big thing has to happen where I have this like big revelation and I hear all the answers and now I'm connected with spirit. Your intuition for me, it's a knowing. It's oh, okay, I get like an instant, there's a thought or there's a feeling or there's just a knowing. And that's very hard to describe if you've never felt that before, except for you have felt that before. And so it's part of it is just, you have to really, the thing I teach on the most is you have to make space. When the energy is all out there, or we're constantly going, you have no idea what you want or what you need. And the reason why so many women get to that point of like, quote unquote, losing themselves or feeling stuck or having no idea who I am, what do I want, what do I actually desire, because we've given zero time for those questions for ourselves. So kind of like letting go of that idea of, because when we talk about intuitive, I think we think it's like it is a spiritual thing, but that can be very confusing. And so if you can just kind of switch that idea of that to, okay, I'm going to get back to knowing myself, and that's where your intuition will come through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because we're, like you said, as we're constantly, specifically as women, like put into these boxes, right? We have to way, and so we're so concerned, about like the judgments of others and how they're gonna like look to us. So like, how can we come? But then, I don't know. I guess you see like men who like run their businesses based on their gut, right? And there's no like second thought to it. But it's like when a woman kind of steps back,
right,
following their intuition, then it's like, really. So
yeah, that's a really good point, because have you read it, Untamed by Glennon Doyle? Okay, yeah, I thought you did. That's a huge thing she talks about, is men don't have to second guess it because they've never been told to second guess themselves. And it's like, just like the world is based on like, for them, right? And this isn't like men against women, but it's true. And so as women, a huge part of the work that we have to do and the work that I do with women is you've got to like shed all of that stuff. We're not meant to second guess ourselves. We're not meant to look for validation elsewhere. We're not meant to get other people's input on what we already know to be true. But we've been taught that you can't trust yourself and your own intuition. So a huge part of it too is like rebuilding that trust with yourself. So shedding all this stuff of, okay, why do I second guess myself? Why do I need outside validation? Because it's really not our fault. It's just the way that the world was designed so that we would question ourselves. But with that being said, now you have to take active action to get rid of that stuff and take the power back and start to rebuild that trust with yourself, that you can trust yourself in the decisions that you make for you.
Yeah. And like, I remember you had described it as a relationship, right? If you break trust with somebody else, it takes a while to rebuild that. And that was, for me, it was kind of like an aha moment where I was like, okay, start listening on the little things, right?
Yeah.
Like before, it's like you're expecting to hear like this outside voice being like, this is what you do, but it's not like that at all. And it's, I even struggle some days with it where I'm like, ooh, your mind gets in the way and you second guess it and stuff like that. But it is just kind of like picking the little things and boundaries. For me, I could talk like for days on boundaries. I still struggle with it really bad, but it's also taking that time, the self-awareness to step back, and then whether it's meditation, breath work, or whatever, and really getting like in tune with yourself.
Yeah, it's so important. That's why I always say make space for you and yourself, because we don't. And so when you don't do that, it's so easy to get swept up in it's kind of easier, honestly, to get yourself swept up in other people's energies, because it's easier to focus on, okay, what do my kids need? What does my partner need? What do my parents want from me? How will I make other people happier? It's not actually easier, but it feels easier. And so it's so important to rebuild that trust with yourself, but also just that relationship with yourself, that I like showing up for yourself. What you want and what you desire is actually a lot more important than what other people want and desire for you. And so but if you don't know that, or if you've never felt into that, I do think, especially right now, all women get to a point where they're like, that, holy shit, this isn't my life.
Yeah.
And so the sooner you can start to, it's scary. It's scary when you have that little feeling of, and I called off my engagement almost like a year and a half ago. And I had that feeling for so long of like, shit, like I know what's true for me and that I did this for other people and like what I thought was going to make me happy.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to look at it because it's like, okay, then if that's not the thing that is meant for my life, then what is? Or if I need to take control of my life, what does that look like? If I need to make all the decisions, what does that look like? So that's why building that relationship and that trust is so important, because you have to build up that, like, knowing that you're capable of doing whatever comes through.
Yeah.
And when you have that moment of like, shit, this isn't my life, it's going to be hard, right? Like, it's not to say, ooh, I'm going to know what's true, or my intuition is going to tell me what to do, and then it's all going to be so amazing. No, you're going to have to make really hard decisions and take really hard action and take control of your life, which is hard if you've never done that. But what's on the other side of doing that is so magic. And even though it's hard, it's a different kind of hard than living in a life that's not yours.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for so many of us too, we have to hit that point of like not even recognizing ourselves anymore.
Yeah.
And for me, that like in my marriage, I was like, I didn't even know who I was. I was like, this isn't even, and of course you still look outwards, but like for me, it was like, this isn't even fair to my kids.
Yeah.
See this version of me. Like I'm not even, I can't even be like a good mom this way. So and you get out, I mean, for me, I got out of it, and then it got even harder to deal with all the emotional aspect of it. But yeah, so it's, I know it's really hard. Like,
yeah.
there's no way. It's like, I actually have this quote written down from the book, because it was like, that just like hit me. But she said, it's okay to feel all the stuff you're feeling. You're just becoming human again. You're not doing life wrong. You're doing it right. If there's any secret you're missing, it's that doing it right is just really hard. Feeling all your feelings is hard, but that's what they're there for. Feelings are for feeling. And I was like, I read that little like paragraph, and I was like,
I cried my way through her whole book. Like,
I cried, I laughed, I
yeah,
so much.
yeah, same. And it's so true. And things are changing, but we have to actively change it. And so, like you said, and I got to that point too. I don't have kids, but I still got to that point in my relationship, not the abusive one, but the one that I recently called off my engagement, where I was like, I don't like the person I am. It has zero to do with him. I don't like who I'm showing up as. And yeah. So sometimes you can like you have to kind of look at it, not outside of you, but like, is this how I want to show up? Is this who I want to be? And it's going to be hard. And I think we're redefining that, like, especially as women, we're taught that we're supposed to just be happy and keep everything together and make sure everybody feels good. And like, look what happens when we do that. Now we're all grown adults. Like, oh, great. We have a lot of us will get to that point where we're like, I don't know how to deal with life because I've never dealt with the actual real, what it means to be human.
Yeah.
And I think, I've said this a lot lately, like, I feel like our generation of adults is really, truly here to actually change it. And our kids are here to start fresh.
Yeah.
And show us like how we were actually supposed to be living, but that's hard. And so it takes courage, and you really need to also give yourself credit that you're doing the work, right? We're all here with that very clear intention, but not everyone's actually going to step on the path and have the courage to do the hard things. But I love how she says it, because that's actually how we're supposed to live, feeling all of the things. We're not supposed to be just like, woo, faking.
Yeah. I think it was last Saturday, I had a complete like breakdown. I was like crying, and I was just like feeling so resentful in that moment of like, I called my friend. I was like, don't judge me. But I was like, I am never in my life did I think I would be 34, single mom, 2 kids, no job, trying to build a business. I was like, part of me feels really resentful for like being right now. And I was like so upset with myself for feeling that way. But I had to just remember, like, these are just feelings, they're passing, and it's okay. It's okay to feel the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we just want to just make it go away all the time and like not feel it, because that's not socially acceptable.
Right.
But it's life, you know?
Yeah. How many times do you hear women especially saying that, like, I feel bad, but here's how I feel, or I'm sorry, but, or, oh, I'm sorry that I felt that way, or I reacted that way, or whatever. How often do you hear men saying that? Not very often.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they weren't taught that, but because, we can look at that like, okay, cool. They weren't taught that, but okay, so now this is how we're supposed to, quote unquote, show
Mhm.
up
Mhm.
in full truth. And the thing is, they too, everybody wants to be able to show up like that and wants us to show up like that. Nobody actually wants us to be just floating around faking it and pretending like everything is good. Everybody wants to know that, okay, it's okay here for you to show what you actually think and feel, and for me to show what I actually think and feel. And so, yeah, I love that. Like,
Yeah.
changing how we think about what we feel and what we think, and making it kind of like all neutral. It is what it is. That's how you think
Mhm.
and you feel. There's no right or wrong way to be.
I don't know where I had read that, or maybe my therapist had told me that or something, but
Mm-hmm.
emotions themselves are not good.
Mm-hmm.
They are what they are. And
Yeah.
for me, anger was always one that I was terrified of anger. I was terrified of feeling it, of like receiving it. But it's like anger is just there to show you where there's an injustice. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be rage, which
Mm.
I think coming from an abusive relationship, or you know that anger is
Yeah.
normal, right? Anger is just like rageful and hateful and all those kind of things, and it's not
Yeah.
all what it's supposed to be.
Totally. Yeah. All feelings and all emotions are neutral. It's just how we choose to react to it is the thing that's going to make it healthy or unhealthy. Because that's a good point, right? Yes, all feelings are neutral and we're allowed to feel all of them. We're not allowed to be unhealthy in the name of my
Yeah,
emotion, or toxic in the name of, oh, that's just how I felt.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When you left your last relationship, when you were engaged, right?
Yeah.
Did you feel like your like personal or even like business, your career life kind of like took off after that?
100%. Yeah.
And
Yeah. So like a year before, I think it was a year before calling off the engagement, I quit my full-time job to, like, I have basically been building my business for right after that abusive relationship. So 8 years or more, and in different ways. And so I was doing it part-time the whole time, and really had that feeling of, I need to quit my job. Like, I cannot be halfway into this thing. Like, you can do that. You have to do that for a while, obviously. But I got to that point of knowing like something feels off, and I think it's this. And so I quit my job and I went full time for a year trying to make it work. And it semi did, but I still had that feeling of like something isn't right. And I already knew that I need to call off my engagement, but that's not the thing that I wanted to do, because I already said yes, and I don't want to be a bad person. I don't want to hurt his feelings, like all of the stuff that obviously comes up when you are going to make a huge shift. So for the whole year of, okay, I quit my full-time job, I tried to make my business work, it still felt like there's something that's like, I always felt like this. If you're watching the video, like I would get a little bit ahead, but then something would just stop me. That was like my intuition really loudly trying to scream at me. And then on my 30th birthday, so about a couple months before, I called off my engagement in September. So from May till September, May, I had this like very clear, okay, this is the place you actually need to look. Like, you've been putting your energy everywhere else. Okay, I need to try this strategy. I need to quit my job. I need to hire this new person, put in all the things that are just out there, which we do when we're in like that crisis. I'm not listening to my intuition mode. I'm just going to like do all the things and something's going to work. So I turned 30 and I finally had this moment of like, okay, you need to look at the thing that you know you need to look at. So I literally from May till September had what I call like a summer of cocoon, where I don't necessarily suggest this, but for me, this is what I really needed. I pretty much told nobody what I was thinking and feeling, because I did not want any outside information or any outside opinion. And I just had a summer of asking exactly what we were talking about at the beginning, asking myself the hard questions and actually listening for the answer, not seeking it out from someone else or uh, just no outside opinion. And I finally got to that place in September where I was trusting of myself enough to actually do the hard thing. And it sounds cold, but very true, that immediately after I did that, everything in my life shifted. And that's not to say, ooh, make a decision and everything will change. But this was like a very long time of doing the work, building that up. But truly, when you do make that decision where something that's in your life that's so out of alignment, and then you click in and you kind of like signal to the universe, okay, I'm all in, I'm going to do the hard thing no matter what. And I've always had that very deep knowing. And I think women, especially who are here with that big purpose, which we all are, but that your purpose is involved with other people. I think we get to that point, and when you make that decision, you're basically willing to do whatever you need to do in order to make it work. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as I did that, yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it required a whole lot of trust. Like at that point in my business, especially, I had no idea how I was going to support myself or how I was going to make it work or what I was going to do. But I had that very clear knowing that if you do this thing, you are going to be massively rewarded. And a month after that, my whole business exploded and I was able to beyond support myself. A month after that, I met the love of my life and everything has unfolded from there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I know I've been watching, I mean, seeing you in your new relationship, mm-hmm. kind of, for me, it's like been a total expander too, you know, just watching it go. But I know it's hard to, it's really hard to do the hard things in relationships, especially because it's empath and being compassionate and having all those feelings. It's like you see somebody and it's not like you dislike all parts of them or anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, and even being in like toxic relationships, I think being highly sensitive and being an empath, it's not all bad, you know? And so like you kind of click the good things where you're like, well, if they could just change or if this could happen. But fortunately I've begun to learn, it's like, you have to see what's in front of you. You can't see what might be or what could be or the potential. It's like, this is just it. So
that's a huge part of listening and trusting your intuition too, is you also have to be very honest with yourself. Trusting your intuition doesn't mean like just trust whatever feels really good. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And so there's that big part of, you just have to see what's in front of you. And like I said, for when I called off my engagement, it really had nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with, I didn't like myself and how I was showing up. Like I was showing up very completely opposite to how I show up now in my relationship, in love, in life, in everything. And everything in your life is so connected that if I knew that because I was showing up so out of alignment with who I actually was in my relationship, that was showing up in every other aspect of my life. And so sometimes, I mean, it's never really about other people. And it really is about, okay, how do I want to show up? Who do I want to be? And are these parts of my life aligned with that or not? And then you have to be honest with yourself about what comes up.
Yeah. And that's the hard part.
Yeah. It's so hard. And it sounds so like annoying. And I'm sure this was so annoying for him to hear, but it was like, I knew 100% that he was shocked and it threw his life off. But I knew for him too, that it was going to be way better than me pretending to be in love and pretending to be in a relationship that I didn't want to be in.
Yeah. Which just eventually breeds resentment. And
if
you're not showing up for yourself as yourself, you can't show up for anybody else.
Totally.
Yeah. I know it is hard to hear. And that's where I'm like, for me, in just beginning a business, and I know, you know, I look at people too. And like you said earlier, it's like, you see people who are doing it and you're like, oh my gosh, like for me, it's been like a year-ish where I'm kind of trying to build this now that with COVID and everything, and I lost, now I can like kind of give it a lot more effort, but still it's frustrating. But I totally lost my train of thought.
I always do that. I'm like, where do I take this now?
Oh no, that's what I say. So, but in just like, in trying to bring that awareness or like trying to teach people or educate, it's really difficult because you have to go through it. You have to. And for me, like, that's why I always like journaling is huge. I journaled. So I've like always been off and on journaling my whole life. It's just like, I have so many random 3 or 4 pages written in them. But like once I left my marriage, that's when I just was like, I gotta somehow get all of this out. And ever since then, I've just been like consistently journaling, but it's just so much in self-awareness.
Yeah.
And that's really what the key is like, you know, even now when I get triggered or, I get upset or when somebody else is triggered, I can at least like, I feel like I see it for what it is. And I may get like last night, there was an instance and I felt myself get triggered. I felt myself get defensive, but I was able to step back and just be like, I'm sorry, this has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
This is my issue and I know you're right, which is why I'm getting like this. So
that self-awareness is huge. And this conversation is huge because, again, I think we think when we get to this level of, okay, I've done the hard thing, I've done the work, I'm like healing, that never again will you feel the opposite of that. And that's not the goal. The goal is exactly what you said. I'm going to notice when these things come up. I'm going to be aware. Someone said to me the other day, like, they observe it, which is such a good way to put it, where something's happening. So let's say, okay, for you, you get triggered by something someone else does. You can feel the reaction happening. And because sometimes your body isn't like caught up with your brain yet, or with your level of consciousness. So it's like, okay, I know that this is not, I see what's happening. I see that I'm reacting to a thing you said because I'm triggered and I'm taking it personally before. And that's huge. That's evidence that you've done the work. Before, it would have just been like, okay, I'm going into rage, I'm going into panic, I'm going into fight or flight, and I'm freaking out, and now we're fighting, and it's like this thing. So the goal isn't for the trigger not to happen or for like you to have an emotion. The goal is to have awareness of what's happening and to be able to kind of like use it. I remember like when I called off my engagement, it was this beautiful, magical shift, but it was freaking hard. And so much was coming up, but I had this very clear awareness that all of this stuff is going to be so huge in my journey. So I'm going to go in. Like, I'm not going to, a lot of us, when we feel something, we're like, oh God, how do I get out of this? How do I feel better? How do I avoid feeling any of this? And instead, like, if you just have that little shift of stop resisting it and just lean into it and see it for what it is, like that little perspective change of this moment in my life is going to be a huge catalyst and something that I know that I'm here to do. And not even like in that big way, but in those moments, if you can just see it for what it is, like, oh, what's this here to show me? Or why am I reacting like this? And like get curious about it and lean into it. Number one, it's going to go away a whole lot faster. And it's just going to feel so much better and actually allow you to heal and not be as triggered anymore or as often triggered anymore.
Yeah. And I think the hard part is like in a trigger, it's without the awareness, and it does take a while to get there.
Yeah.
And even when I talk about like food and diet or getting healthy, it's not going to shift overnight. You have to take small, even talking about like chewing your food, like slowing down. Even if you do it once in a whole meal, that one time brings that awareness. So, there gets in triggers. Like for me, whenever I used to get triggered, there was no way I could stop and like mentally process anything through it. But it was like, for me, it was like taking the few minutes afterwards, processing it. And now it's gotten to the point where, like last night in the middle of a trigger, I was like, could process it and see it for what it was. So it takes a long time to get there. And I think it's so important and that's why I think journaling is so important, or just self-reflection after the fact, or knowing, I think that knowledge of anything that you're triggered by has something to do with you, as opposed to putting the blame on somebody else. Or, I mean, I know there's a bunch, I'm like trying to word it properly, because I know, obviously abusive situations, like physical triggers, there's obviously reasons for it. So not to say that it's not, but
and that's where that truth and that honesty with yourself comes in. Obviously, in a relationship is a little bit different of a dynamic, especially if it's unhealthy or abusive. But that's where that truth and that honesty with yourself of, if it's happening that often, especially when another person is involved, that's where the truth and the conversation with yourself can come in. But the goal isn't to never be triggered or never feel anything. The goal is to have that awareness of, well, why is that coming up? Or what is that here to show me? Or is that even true? Right? Like, so if I'm 30, almost 33, if for the past 33 years of my life, I've been like picking up all this evidence that this thing is true and this is how I react, but I don't want that to be true anymore. So for me, a lot of this has come in relationships. And when Justin and I started dating, I was triggered all the time because he's here, to show me what love actually is supposed to be like, and what relationships are actually supposed to be like, and what men are actually like. But I had a lot of evidence that all of that wasn't true. So that means I had to intentionally decide, this isn't what was true before. Maybe before it was true that love wasn't safe, men cheat, blah, 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 like all the stories that I had. So yes, he's going to trigger me, but he's here to trigger me so that I can look at it and decide, okay, things are different now, and here's what's actually true. And that, again, is not to say that be in an abusive relationship or a toxic relationship and make excuses. But if you have that deep knowing that this person actually is here with good intention and here to help you grow, then you're probably going to be extra triggered.
Yeah, absolutely. I just started dating in like December, and for 2.5 years after I left my marriage, like I was like, I'm not doing it. I have to work on myself. But I think like definitely opening from being so long of just like doing the work on myself and then reintroducing like relationships, then it's so hard because that's something outside of myself, you know? And like same thing, I just feel like it was like trigger after trigger after trigger. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so hard. Like I just wanted to go back into like my cocoon and to be like, I'm done. But it is showing you areas. For me, I feel like it shows me places I need to grow still, places I need to bring my attention to, I need awareness to, or like you said, just also showing you like, you're safe now. It's okay. Like kind of let go.
Yeah.
But there's an element for me that I struggle with is that communication element. Yeah. Now I need to explain why I'm feeling these ways. And that's kind of where I get caught up. But
yeah, it's hard. Like that's the answer to everything. It's hard, but it's a very different hard than living not true to who you are and not true to how you actually feel and how you actually want to be. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, before I left my marriage, like I never cried. I was like so proud of the fact that I wasn't, you know, because if you cried, you were weak. If I ever did cry in my relationship, that's what I would be called. Oh, you're so weak. You're such a baby. You can't like whatever, like stuff. So I just like I never did for literally like my whole life. And once I like became free of that relationship, I cry all the time. Like I'll call my friend and I'll be crying. And earlier you said like not asking people for advice. That's one thing I've like really intentionally try not to do now is I don't want outside to like influence what I know within. But like I will like in moments when I'm upset, like I might like call a friend and my one friend, she's always like, I hate to see you upset. Like I hate to see you hurting. And I'm like, no, but this is good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sorry that I'm crying. I just need somebody to speak to like get my thoughts out. But yeah, it's like, it's weird. It's so hard to like feel so much all the time, but then it also feels like so freeing because I know I'm releasing it and I know I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the difference, right? Like, you know, you're solid. Then that's why it's so important to build that relationship and that trust with yourself. So you can feel safe to feel all that stuff, or you can feel solid that even though you're feeling an emotion at your core, you still have that power and you still have that knowing that you're good.
Yeah.
And that's good that you're feeling all the things.
Yeah. And just allowing it. It's, I know it's like, it's just hard.
It's hard, but it's so freeing and it's so good. And it's how we're actually supposed to be living. It's just hard because, well, we weren't taught that like, it's okay. And so there's like that battle within yourself of, oh my God, I'm feeling that thing. Why am I feeling that thing? I got to fix it. And so there's just so much behind it to work through.
Yeah. And I think, it comes down to, being genuine with yourself, being authentic with yourself, others, being honest about what you're feeling. Cause so often we're just like, you have to walk this path and that is so constricting. You're just like, I know that's like, for me, I just never felt like I literally felt like I was walking around like in this cocoon, especially when it came to like expressing myself and using my voice. Like, that's why this podcast to me was so freeing. Cause like when I first started, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to sit and talk for 20 minutes, you know, like, or even 15 minutes. Cause I've always felt like I can't speak. That's been my struggle my whole life. But now as I've grown spiritually and found my purpose and stuff, it's always the thing that's hard to do is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's a good point with your question before about like, how do you start to what your intuition is? What's the thing that you've been being pulled towards? So start a podcast or speak up, say the thing. Like there's that little like pull And then usually it's almost always there's a follow-up. So, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. Well, how am I going to talk for 20 minutes? Who's going to listen to me? Who am I to start a podcast? Like, well, your intuition was that first thing. And that's not true for everybody that your intuition comes first, but if you're just starting to tap into, okay, what am I here to do? Who am I here to be? What is my intuition trying to tell me? What's that thing that constantly keeps coming up, but you're looking away from it? Or you're like, no, that's not the answer, because we want the answer we want. So for me, that huge example was my intuition was for basically 4 years telling me, this is not the person you're supposed to be with. Call off your engagement. Don't get married. And I'm like, okay, it's like over here. And I'm like, no, it's not that. I'm going to look over here. It must be my business. It must be my, like, all of these things. So what's that thing that's constantly like, hello, I'm trying to tell you this is the thing. And you're like, no, that's not the thing. Because you're looking for your own answer.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to start, because we all have those very clear themes of things that has been trying to be told to us.
And I think like a lot of times there's resistance towards it.
Yeah.
You feel that kind of like there's that friction almost.
Yeah. And it's very subtle, like we were saying before. It's not usually this moment. Sometimes it is, but the way that I always describe how it comes through for me, and usually for everybody, is your intuition has no emotion, which for women is very uncomfortable, because we've been like, oh wow, what a bitch. First of all, like when I was like, I need to call off my engagement, it had no emotion. It was very like, no, that's the thing you need to do. Once I got to the knowing, when I heard it the first 4 years, which is like a long freaking time, it was like, oh my God, like my reaction was like, I can't do that. But then when I did the work to actually build that trust, it was like, you need to call up your engagement. And there was no emotion attached to it. It wasn't like, oh, what came after was like, oh my God, how's that going to make him feel? What are people going to think? But the intuitive knowing was cold. And so we resist it because, oh my God, like, what are people going to think about me if I do that thing? Because it usually requires something that other people may judge or may have feelings or emotions or thoughts about. Not always, but so we resist it because it has no emotion, which is also uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what's so hard with boundaries too, because
Yeah.
boundaries are so cold, but really it's like boundaries are caring for the other person and caring for yourself enough to like.
Yeah. And that little mindset shift is everything, because it's not. Trusting your intuition is not cold. Saying no is not cold. Actually telling people what you think and feel is not cold and not bitchy and not rude and not whatever. That's the most loving and most kind thing you can do for yourself, but also for other people.
Yeah. But we're just taught throughout our entire lives the opposite. And so it's so difficult. I know I just always tell myself, like, no is a complete sentence. It's to say no.
Yeah. Like we say, okay, no, but, or I'm sorry, but, or we add like, haha, LOL, he, like, and we know why we do it, because we are really uncomfortable with making other people. And the thing is, they aren't always uncomfortable. A lot of what we fear is what we think people are going to react to, but it's generally, sometimes it's true, but oh well, right? Like, I think we are all getting to this point where we're tapped out from showing up in the world with how people want us to, but that's going to require a whole lot of speaking up. And so for me, I had to really redefine what those quote unquote hard conversations looked like. I didn't have a lot of conversations I should have had, because I was afraid of, like, the buildup was so intense that I was like, forget it. Like, I don't need, it's not that big of a deal. Those little things that aren't that big of a deal are going to end up to be a massive deal. And with other people in our life, like, okay, if I look at intimate relationships, I don't want the people in my life. So for example, Justin, I don't want him to like hold in all of these little things that aren't a big deal because he's afraid to tell me. I want those little things to not turn into big things. But we all want that for other people in our life, but we don't do that. But you have to teach people not only how to treat you, but how you want to be in relationship. So that giving and that receiving energy is very uncomfortable for women, and men, honestly, too. So it's hard because it's a rebuilding of everything that we thought was true, and it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. But again, the not doing it is going to be 10 times more uncomfortable comfortable in the long run.
Oh yeah. Oh, just when you said that, like that, you talk yourself out of it. I did that like my whole life, where it was like,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal, and then just like leave it and walk away.
Yeah.
No,
And it's a big freaking deal.
yeah, yeah. Even though you know exactly that you need to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's just yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's hard, but it's worth it, is the
Yes.
main point of this whole conversation.
Exactly. And it's, yeah, you get to that point where you just realize you've done something, and then you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I've come so far.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, when you're in it, you feel like you're like running through the mud or the sand or whatever, and then
Mhm.
point where you just realize like it's all.
Yeah.
all-
And that's what's so magic about, and it doesn't have to be these big things, but because we've talked about like these big, like, whoa, that shifted everything. That's what's so magic. And that's what's so magic about looking back at the how far you've come, is you're like, I did that.
Mhm.
And that's why making decisions for yourself is so important, because you did that for you. You didn't do that for, it's like, it's a very different energy and feeling when you're not even just, like when you're creating your life, you're manifesting all of the things into your life. You created that. That's why I talk about the fact that you're the magic. It's not all the stuff out there. Yes, there's like strategies and tools and whatever, but if you pull all of that back to you and you listen to yourself and you do the stuff from there, then you have those moments in your life where you can look back at the hard things you've done and realize like, I did that.
Mhm.
And that's huge.
It's incredible, and it's so freeing. There's like,
Mm-hmm.
I know like personally that there's a few things I need to like let fall off, but the amount of freedom I feel now, and just how empowering that makes me feel, like as just like a woman, and
Yeah.
as a human, it's incredible. So
Yeah. I love it.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you.
I know where they can find you.
The easiest place is Instagram. That's where I'm the most, and that's at Stephanie Dawn Elizabeth. And then my podcast is Made of Magic.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So fun.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Great.
Bye.